Let me say something that's going to make you uncomfortable, and if you're not proud of yourself right now, you're wasting your life. Not struggling, not learning, not growing, wasting. Because every single day you spend being mediocre, being average, being less than what you know you're capable of becoming is a day you can never get back. And the tragic part, most of you will read this, feel a momentary spark of motivation, and then go right back to the same comfortable patterns that keep you stuck. You'll make excuses about timing, about resources, about circumstances. But here's the truth nobody wants to hear. The only thing standing between you and the life that makes you proud is your own willingness to endure discomfort. And most of you aren't willing. You want the pride without the pain, the achievement without the sacrifice, the transformation without the struggle. But that's not how life works. That's not how anything worth having has ever worked. You know what breaks my heart? It's watching talented people give up on themselves. Right at this moment. Somewhere in the world, someone with incredible potential is about to quit. They're about to throw in the towel on their dreams, their goals, their future. And the tragedy is this. They're usually just inches away from the breakthrough they've been working toward. This isn't just sad, it's a disaster. Because when you stop before you feel proud of yourself, you're not just losing a goal. You're losing a piece of your soul. You're accepting a version of yourself that's smaller, weaker, less capable than the person you were meant to become. And that's a price too high to pay. Let me tell you something that might sting a little bit. The biggest obstacle between you and the life you want isn't the economy, it isn't your education, it isn't your background or your circumstances. The biggest obstacle is the voice inside your head that whispers, "That's good enough. You can stop now. This is acceptable." But here's the brutal truth. Acceptable is the enemy of excellent. Good enough is the graveyard where dreams go to die. When you settle for anything less than what makes you genuinely proud, you're betraying your own potential. Pride isn't arrogance. Let me make that crystal clear. Pride is that deep, quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing you gave everything you had. It's looking in the mirror and respecting the person staring back at you. It's going to bed at night without regrets, eating away at your peace of mind. It's waking up in the morning excited about who you're becoming. That's the pride I'm talking about. That's the feeling that tells you you've earned the right to celebrate yourself. And until you feel that pride, your work isn't finished. Most people spend their entire lives chasing external validation. They want the applause, the recognition, the awards, the social media likes. They build their entire identity around what other people think of them. But let me ask you a question that cuts through all that noise. When you're alone with your thoughts, when nobody's watching and nobody's judging, do you feel proud of yourself? Because that's the only measurement that truly matters. That's the only scorecard that determines whether you're winning or losing at the game of life. Let me share something with you about a man named William. 20 years ago, William had a dream of building his own consulting business. He had the skills, he had the knowledge, he had the passion. But the first year was brutal. He made exactly 3 sales. 3. His bank account was nearly empty. His friends told him to get a real job. His family worried about his future. Every morning he woke up wondering if he was crazy for continuing. Every night he went to bed exhausted and discouraged. But here's what separated William from everyone else who starts and quits. He refused to stop until he felt proud. Not successful by someone else's definition. Not comfortable, not safe, proud. William kept going through year 2, then year 3. He studied, he improved, he learned from every failure, he adjusted his approach, he worked when he didn't feel like it, he made calls when he was scared of rejection, he invested in himself when he could barely afford groceries. And somewhere in year 4, something shifted. The skills he'd been developing started to compound. The relationships he'd been building started to pay off. The reputation he'd been earning started to spread. Within 18 months, his business exploded. Today, William runs a consulting firm that generates millions in revenue annually. But you know what he told me? He said the money was never the goal. The pride was the goal. the pride of knowing he didn't quit when it was hard, the pride of proving to himself that he was stronger than his circumstances, the pride of becoming the person capable of building something remarkable. Now, why do people stop before they reach that point of pride? Let me explain something about human psychology that most people don't understand. Your brain is designed for survival, not success. It's programmed to keep you safe, comfortable, and conserving energy. Every time you push yourself towards something difficult, your brain sends warning signals. It creates fear, it generates doubt, it manufactures excuses. It tells you stories about why you should quit. And if you don't understand this mechanism, you'll believe those stories. You'll think the fear means you're on the wrong path. You'll think the doubt means you don't have what it takes. You'll think the discomfort means you should stop. But the opposite is true. The fear, the doubt, the discomfort. These are signs that you're growing. They're evidence that you're pushing beyond your current limitations. The comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. Think about that for a moment. Everything you want, the confidence, the success, the respect, the achievements, everything exists outside your comfort zone, and your brain will do everything in its power to keep you inside that zone. It will convince you that you're not ready. It will remind you of past failures. It will exaggerate the risks and minimize the rewards. It's not trying to hurt you. It's trying to protect you. But protection and growth cannot coexist. You must choose one or the other. Here's another reason people stop too early. They're terrified of success. I know that sounds strange, but it's absolutely true. Success requires you to become a different person. It requires you to take on new responsibilities. It requires you to let go of old identities and old relationships that no longer serve you. And that transformation is frightening. Failure, in some twisted way, is safer. Failure lets you stay small. Failure gives you excuses. Failure allows you to blame circumstances instead of taking responsibility. But pride requires you to own your power. And that's scary as hell. We live in a world that worships instant gratification. Everyone wants the shortcut, the hack, the overnight success. But the truth is, anything worth having takes time. Anything worth achieving requires patience. Anything that will make you truly proud demands sustained effort over months and years, not days and weeks. So let's get brutally honest about where you are right now. Not where you wish you were, not where you tell people you are, not where you plan to be someday. Where are you actually standing at this exact moment? Because until you face your current reality with complete honesty, you cannot chart a path forward. Most people lie to themselves about their situation. They make excuses. They blame external factors. They create elaborate stories about why things aren't working out. But successful people, people who eventually feel deep pride in themselves, they start by looking in the mirror and saying, "This is where I am. This is what I've created. This is the result of my decisions, and from this point forward, everything changes." There's a gap between where you are and where you could be. That gap represents your untapped potential. For some of you, that gap is small. For others, it's massive. But here's what you need to understand. The size of that gap doesn't matter nearly as much as your willingness to close it. Every single person who's ever achieved something remarkable started with a gap. They started with a distance between their current self and their ideal self. The only difference between them and everyone else is they refused to let that gap intimidate them. They refused to let that distance discourage them. They simply started moving one step at a time toward the person they wanted to become. Now, let me tell you about a mistake that destroys more dreams than anything else. People overestimate what they can accomplish in 1 month, and they dramatically underestimate what they can accomplish in 5 years. They set enormous goals for the short term, fail to achieve them quickly, get discouraged, and quit. Meanwhile, they completely miss the extraordinary transformation that's possible with consistent effort over an extended period. If you improve yourself by just 1% each day, do you know where you'll be in 1 year? You'll be 37 times better than you are right now. 37 times. That's not motivation talk. That's mathematics. That's the compound effect in action. Think about compound interest in a bank account. You put money in, and it earns interest, then that interest earns interest, then the interest on the interest earns more interest. Over time, the growth becomes exponential. Your personal development works exactly the same way. Every book you read makes the next book more valuable because you have more knowledge to connect it to. Every skill you develop makes the next skill easier to learn because you've already built the discipline. Every small victory makes the next challenge less intimidating, because you've proven to yourself that you can overcome obstacles. This is how ordinary people create extraordinary lives, not through massive overnight transformations, but through tiny improvements compounded over time. Let me give you some real numbers to make this concrete. Let's say you want to build a business that generates $10,000 per month in revenue. That sounds like a huge goal when you're starting at zero, doesn't it? But break it down. $10,000 per month is about $330 per day. If your average sale is $100, you need 3.3 sales per day. If your conversion rate is 10%, you need 33 conversations per day. Suddenly, that massive goal becomes a simple daily action. Have 33 quality conversations. Do that consistently, and the $10,000 month becomes inevitable. The magic isn't in the goal. The magic is in the daily execution of simple actions that compound over time. But here's what most people don't see. Progress is invisible for a long time. You work and work and work, and it feels like nothing's happening. The scale doesn't move, the bank account doesn't grow, the recognition doesn't come. And this is the danger zone. This is where 90% of people quit. They can't see the progress, so they assume there is no progress. But underneath the surface, everything is changing. Your skills are sharpening, your network is expanding, your reputation is building, your character is strengthening. All of this is happening in ways you cannot immediately measure. And then one day, seemingly out of nowhere, everything clicks. The results show up, the breakthrough arrives. But it wasn't out of nowhere. It was the inevitable result of all those invisible days of effort. Momentum is the most powerful force in achievement. When you have momentum, everything becomes easier, opportunities appear, doors open, people want to help you, success breeds more success. But momentum doesn't start with big actions, it starts with tiny wins. It starts with keeping one small promise to yourself, then another, then another. You commit to waking up 30 minutes earlier, and you do it. That's a win. You commit to reading 10 pages per day, and you do it. That's a win. You commit to making 5 sales calls, and you do it. That's a win. Each small win builds your confidence. Each kept promise strengthens your self-trust. And slowly, gradually, inevitably, the momentum builds until you become unstoppable. Here's the secret that changes everything. You don't need motivation, you need systems. Motivation is an emotion, and emotions are unreliable. Some days you feel motivated, other days you don't. But systems work regardless of how you feel. A system is a set of processes and habits that produce results automatically. Wake up at the same time. Follow the same morning routine. Block out the same hours for focused work. Review your goals at the same time each week. These systems remove willpower from the equation. They make success automatic. And when success becomes automatic, pride becomes inevitable. Let me tell you about Franklin. Franklin wanted to become a professional speaker. He had a message he believed in, but he had zero experience and no connections in the industry. For 3 years, Franklin spoke for free anywhere that would have him. Church, basements, community centers, small business meetings. Sometimes 5 people showed up, sometimes 50. He recorded every speech. He watched the recordings and critiqued himself. He studied other speakers. He read books on communication. He practiced his craft relentlessly, year after year, while working a full-time job to pay his bills. Franklin dedicated every spare moment to becoming excellent at speaking. Nobody knew his name. Nobody was paying attention. He had no evidence that this would ever work out, but he had something more important than evidence. He had discipline. He had systems. He had unwavering commitment to improvement. Then in year 4, someone who mattered saw him speak at a small event. That person recommended him for a paid speaking opportunity. That opportunity led to another. Within 2 years, Franklin was speaking at major conferences, earning substantial fees and impacting thousands of lives. But none of that would have happened if he'd stopped in year 2 when nothing was working. The breakthrough came because he refused to quit before he felt proud. You know what Franklin told me when I asked him about those early years? He said the hardest part wasn't the rejection. It wasn't the empty rooms or the technical failures or even the financial struggle. The hardest part was looking at himself in the mirror every single day and wondering if he was delusional. His friends had moved on with their lives. They had promotions, houses, families, and there he was, speaking to 7 people in a library conference room, still chasing what seemed like an impossible dream. But Franklin made a decision that changed everything. He decided that external validation was irrelevant. He decided that other people's timelines didn't matter. He decided that the only opinion that counted was his own. And every night before bed, he asked himself one question: am I proud of who I was today? Not, did I succeed today? Not, did I make money today? Not, did people recognize me today? Just, am I proud of the person I was today? Some nights the answer was yes. Many nights it was no. But that question became his North Star. It guided every decision. When he wanted to sleep in instead of practice, he asked the question. When he wanted to skip the small speaking opportunity because it felt beneath him, he asked the question. When he wanted to quit entirely and take the easy path, he asked the question. And the desire to answer yes with integrity kept him moving forward when nothing else could. Here's what most people don't understand about pride. It's not about the destination. It's about the journey. It's not about what you achieve. It's about who you become in the pursuit of achievement. Franklin became a man of character during those invisible years. He became disciplined. He became resilient. He became someone who kept his word to himself. And when the success finally came, he was ready for it. He had built the internal foundation to handle it. The pride he felt wasn't about the full auditoriums or the speaking fees. It was about knowing he'd honored his commitment to himself. He'd refused to quit when quitting was the easier path. Let's talk about the voice that tells you to stop. You know the one I'm talking about. It shows up when you're exhausted. It shows up when you've been working for months with no visible results. It shows up when everyone around you thinks you're wasting your time. That voice is sophisticated. It doesn't just say quit. It gives you rational sounding reasons to quit. Be realistic, it says. You've given it your best shot. Maybe this isn't meant to be. You can always try again later. At least you tried. These statements sound reasonable. They sound mature. They sound like wisdom. But they're lies designed to keep you small. The truth is, you haven't given it your best shot until you feel proud of your effort. You haven't truly tried until you've exhausted every possibility. You haven't reached your limit until you've gone further than you thought possible. Most people quit at the first sign of real difficulty. They mistake discomfort for impossibility. They confuse temporary setbacks with permanent failure. They treat obstacles as stop signs when they should be treating them as puzzles to solve. I want you to think about something for a moment. What would your life look like 5 years from now if you refused to quit on yourself? What would you be capable of if you committed to daily improvement regardless of how you felt? What doors would open if you built a reputation as someone who finishes what they start? What relationships would develop if you became known as a person of integrity and consistency? What income would you generate if you mastered your craft through relentless practice? What impact would you have if you pushed through every excuse and every fear? Now consider the alternative. What happens if you stop now? What does your life look like 5 years from now if you give up on this goal, this dream, this version of yourself you're trying to become? Will you be proud of that decision? Will you look back with satisfaction, knowing you gave up when things got hard? Or will you look back with regret, wondering what could have been if only you'd persevered a little longer? Regret is a poison that destroys from the inside out. I've met people in their 60s and 70s who are still haunted by the dreams they abandoned in their 20s and 30s. They tell me about the business they almost started, the book they almost wrote, the relationship they almost fought for, the skill they almost mastered. And every single one of them says the same thing. I wish I'd kept going. I wish I hadn't let fear stop me. I wish I'd trusted myself. Don't let that be your story. Don't spend the second half of your life mourning the potential you wasted in the first half. Here's a framework that will change how you think about perseverance. Imagine your goal is on the other side of a wall. You can't see over the wall. You don't know how thick it is. All you know is that it's between you and what you want. Most people start hitting that wall with a hammer. They hit it once, twice, 10 times, 100 times. And because they can't see any cracks, because they can't measure their progress, they assume they're making no progress. So they stop hammering, they walk away, they tell themselves the wall is too thick, the goal is impossible, they're not cut out for this. But here's what they don't know. Every single hit weakened that wall. Every single effort created microscopic fractures. If they'd hit it one more time, or 10 more times, or 100 more times, the wall would have crumbled. The breakthrough was coming. It was inevitable. But they quit before the evidence appeared. They stopped before they could feel proud of breaking through. You are hitting your wall right now. Every day you show up is another hit. Every time you do the work despite not seeing results is another hit. Every moment you choose perseverance over comfort is another hit. Those fractures are forming. The wall is weakening, but you cannot see it yet. And that's okay. You don't need to see it. You just need to keep swinging. The breakthrough is coming. The only way you lose is if you stop before it arrives. Let me tell you about a woman named Maria. Maria grew up in poverty. Her parents worked multiple jobs just to keep food on the table. She had every excuse to settle for a mediocre life. But Maria decided that her circumstances were her starting point, not her ceiling. She got a job at 16 and started saving money. She enrolled in community college. She worked full-time during the day and studied at night. Her friends partied while she studied. They slept in while she went to class. They spent money on clothes and entertainment while she saved every dollar for tuition. For 6 years, Maria lived like this. 6 years of sacrifice, 6 years of exhaustion, 6 years of choosing her future over her present comfort. She transferred to a university. She graduated with honors. She got accepted into law school. And then came 3 more years of brutal work, 3 more years of late nights and early mornings, 3 more years of missing social events and delayed gratification. Her friends had graduated, gotten jobs, started families. They had normal lives. And there was Maria, still grinding, still studying, still working toward a goal that seemed impossibly far away. But Maria had made peace with something that most people never accept. Meaningful achievement requires extended periods of difficulty. She knew she was playing a different game than her friends. They were optimizing for short-term pleasure. She was optimizing for long-term pride. They wanted to feel good today. She wanted to feel proud for the rest of her life. Different values, different choices, different destinations. Maria passed the bar exam on her first attempt. She got hired by a prestigious law firm. Within 8 years of starting that job at 16, she went from poverty to financial security. But you know what made her proudest? It wasn't the income. It wasn't the title. It wasn't the corner office or the respect or the accomplishments. What made her proud was knowing she'd kept every promise she'd made to herself. I think she'd said she would do it, and she did it. She'd committed to transforming her life, and she transformed it. That pride, that deep, unshakable pride, was worth more than all the money she earned. And here's the beautiful part. Once Maria felt that pride, it became addictive. She realized she was capable of more than she'd imagined. If she could go from poverty to law degree, what else could she accomplish? So she started another goal, then another. The pride from one achievement created momentum for the next. Success became her new normal because she'd built the identity of someone who doesn't quit. She'd proven to herself that she could endure any difficulty, overcome any obstacle, and achieve any goal she committed to. That's the power of refusing to stop until you feel proud. Now let me address something important, the difference between stubbornness and perseverance. Stubbornness is continuing to do something that clearly isn't working. Perseverance is continuing to work toward a goal while adapting your approach. If you're putting effort into something and getting no results, you don't need to quit the goal, you need to change the strategy. Talk to someone who's already achieved what you're trying to achieve. Just study their path, learn from their mistakes, adjust your approach, but don't quit the goal just because the first method didn't work. Edison didn't quit trying to create the light bulb after the first failed attempt, or the 100th, or the 1000th. He tried 10,000 different approaches. When someone asked him about all those failures, he said, "I didn't fail 10,000 times. I successfully discovered 10,000 ways that don't work." That's perseverance. That's the mindset that creates breakthroughs. That's the attitude that leads to pride. Think about your current goal. How many approaches have you tried? If the answer is 1 or 2, you haven't even begun to scratch the surface of what's possible. There are dozens of paths to any destination. If the path you're on isn't working, find another path. But don't turn around and go home. Don't quit the mountain because the first trail was too steep. Find a different trail. The summit is still waiting for you.